Sir, we have a priority signal from the Star Destroyer.
Right.
Okay, listen up, pilots. Today we're talking about something very important. It's come to my attention that over all the months I've been playing this game, I have noticed a lot of pilots simply still don't understand basic attack strategy. So today we're going to talk about the standard Imperial attack strategy that, if employed correctly, would see a great improvement over many teams' ability to win the fleet battles. We're going to talk about fits. We're going to talk about what each role, each pilot in the squadron should be doing, what their responsibilities are, and essentially how to execute. Right? So let's jump right in to standard Imperial attack strategy A. So here we have one of the standard Imperial attack strategies that I'll walk you through. So this is separated into a 2-2-1 format. And what that means is 2 fighter screen, 2 objective, 1 flex. Okay? Now, the 2-2-1 strategy is for attack only. So this assumes the center fight has already been won by the far superior Imperial forces, and is now engaging the Alliance forces in an attack to take out their frigates. We have yet to punch through the frigates to move to the MC-75. The MC-75 is a separate video that I'll cover later. This is only the attack on Empire. We will do another video for attack on Republic. So what is 2-2-1? Well, as we see here, our support player is our flex. Okay? Now the responsibility of our support pilot is to stay behind the fighter screen and the objective TIE fighters. Their job in support is to support the attack wave. At no point should your support or Reaper pilot be anywhere ahead of the fighter screen or the interceptors or objective TIE fighters. Now you will notice in this strategy we are not using TIE bombers at all, and there is a reason for that. On defense, we will pull out the TIE bombers, but in this strategy, we are using what's known as bully TIEs, or heavy objective TIE fighters. Now, I have a screenshot of how these TIE fighters are fit, and we're going to walk you through why we have these TIE fighters fit this way. So this is what's known as a bully TIE fighter, or a heavy objective TIE. Okay? The job of this TIE fighter is not to engage and get tied up with the fighter screen. Its job is to drop torpedoes, piercing protons, onto the frigates in coordination and in teamwork with the other TIE fighter, who is fit similar, but with a small change. TIE Fighter 2, on the heavy objective team, will be using ion torpedoes, piercing torpedoes. Notice how they also have an ion cannon. If the torpedo is not successful and the fighter screen is not able to pull off or engage the enemy A-wings and X-wings that are trying to chaff out their frigates, then they will simply use the ion gun, put some pressure on the shields, and rotate. We use reinforced hulls on the TIE fighters with jet engines to ensure that fast recharge on boost and boost gasping, which was covered in the J-hook video. You'll notice that you use a limited amount of boost to kind of bump yourself through. You can boost for extended periods of time, allowing you to change your vector very quickly, making it more difficult for the enemy to land shots. TIE Fighter 1 and TIE Fighter 2 are responsible for the shields dropping and most of the damage applied to the enemy Nebulon B frigates. Their job, okay, as Assault Group 1, is to engage and destroy frigates A and B. Okay? Now, we do this in rotation strategy, which means TIE Fighters 1 and TIE Fighter 2, okay, on the assault group, do not go in onesie-twosie. typically it's best for both TIE fighters to coordinate together and come in as one unit, with probably, I don't know, at least 1,000 meters between the two. Any more, and it's too difficult for them to get out. And what you want to do with these TIE fighters is you want to start from your from the Architan's defense zone. You want to swoop in, drop your torpedoes, come around, and head straight back out and do it again. Now you can turn around in midfield and re-engage, but it's better to head straight back to the Architans if you take too much fire, or your TIE fighter drops below 70% health. Because if you come in on a run and an enemy A-wing gets you locked on and your fighter screen isn't there to help you, then it's a good chance that that TIE fighter will go down. And it's best to reduce the amount of lives that you give up. Extending attack phases is what wins most battles these days, so you must be very careful. It's better to miss your torpedo run and not die than to land your torpedo run and die. Okay, your life is more important than applying damage to the Nebulon. A lot of people believe that it's all about getting objective damage all the time, but if you give up 5 TIE fighters to get that damage, it's simply not worth it. You are better off protecting your Raider and let it do the bulk of the damage and not give up the lives of your TIE fighter pilots than to get 2 or 3 torpedo runs and then have the stage flip. Okay, let's clear this off. And we'll move on to the fighter screen. So remember, Attack Group 1, TIE Fighters 1 and 2 are responsible for the ion and the shields and the damage on the Nebulons. Now, it's typically best to attack whatever Nebulon B frigate is being engaged by the enemy Raider, or our friendly Raider in this case, sorry, at the same time. You get the bonus damage of the Raider mixed with the damage of your TIE fighters. If you are able to take down a frigate in a phase, it will help with your morale meter. So it is best to focus on one target at a time instead of splitting your damage between the 2 frigates, unless that is your strategy from the beginning. Now, in most cases, a lot of groups who are not preset will be in matches with people who simply do not have microphones. So it is best to understand that the type of ship you're using is good for the role. What we would like to do is for everyone to get on board with this idea so that most people in pub matches and whatnot understand simple basic strategy. Like, for example, if you are in support, run with a Mark Mask ion setup. Ion guns on the Reaper help with the shield stripping, and on defense help with the enemy Corvette shield stripping as well. This in turn, mixed with the marks, allows for like improved damage to apply to any frigates and enemy bombers who now can no longer chaff because they are marked, which makes the jobs for not only the fighter screen easier, but also the jobs for the objective TIE fighters easier as well. An increase in 30% with the marks allows 30% more damage across 2 TIE fighters. It's a significant amount. So, simple ideas, simple strategies work well. Don't overcomplicate it. The reason, again, we use TIE fighters in this case is because TIE fighters have higher survivability than TIE bombers. TIE bombers have struggling, or are struggling in high-level play, to get in, do damage, and be able to make it back without being intercepted and killed by the enemy fighter screen. Even with friendly fighter screen there to protect them, it's very difficult for the bombers to survive. Okay, now that we've discussed Assault Group 1 and the responsibilities of TIE Fighters 1 and 2 and the responsibilities of the support, we're going to move on to the responsibilities of the fighter screen. Now here's where things get confusing for most people. A lot of players at play, what I've noticed is they will run a 4-1 setup. And what that means is they will run 4 TIE fighters, either TIE interceptors or TIE defenders or TIE fighters, but they will all be playing what's known as fighter screen. So all 4 people are suppressing bombers, enemy X-wings, A-wings, supports, and the like, and nobody will be going after the primary targets, which are the Nebulon B frigates. And so the stages will last a long time, sometimes if you have strong fighter screen, but what ends up happening is not enough damage gets applied to the frigates, and then when it's the Alliance's turn to engage, they might destroy one or both of the Architan's cruisers come their phase, because there's too much emphasis put on fighter screen responsibility and not enough on applying damage to the targets you need. That's why the 2-2-1 setup is quite meta at high level play, because it's a good balance between having two people in TIE defenders or TIE interceptors with fits like these. I'll show you these fits. This is a TIE interceptor setup for fighter screen. Notice how it has a target jammer and repair, because the TIE interceptor simply does not have the sustainability to stick around and bang with some of the A-wings and X-wings. It's better to come in, cloak, take a shot, bang, bang, bang. If you get them, it's great. If you don't, your job as fighter screen is not to secure kills and just be an absolute badass. Your job as fighter screen is to engage X-wings and A-wings who are engaging your objective TIE fighters. So, for example, if A-wing 1 here decided he doesn't like TIE Fighter 2 and he wants to stop the objective damage coming in on Nebulon, he is going to focus that TIE fighter. We use bully ties to make sure that the time it takes for this A-wing to kill that TIE fighter is the most it can possibly be, which gives time for the tailing fighter screen defenders or interceptors to get behind and engage and destroy the A-wing that is trying to kill our objective damage. Fighter screen's job is not to secure kills. It is if you can, but it's not to tail people around, waste all this time, and let him go back to base when he could be shooting a few times, engaging the A-wing. A-wing pulls away, goes back to base, which leaves the TIE fighters who are objective focused to engage and destroy the Nebulons. Your job in fighter screen is to protect, destroy, and engage the enemy fighters trying to kill your objective TIEs, and to stop the Y-wings from doing what's known as the NPC farm. Everything is about morale when it comes to the fleet battle, and enemy teams at high level will be using Y-wing bombers with Goliath missiles and multi-logs to destroy NPC waves as they're coming in. These NPC waves give a lot of morale, so destroying a single wave of NPCs is the equivalent to almost 2 player kills for a single NPC wave. Now, we all know that it's much more difficult to secure player kills than it is to shoot an NPC wave that simply does not avoid damage or fire. So it's important for the enemy, like for the friendly TIE defenders on the fighter screen, to engage and destroy the Y-wing's primary target, and then only to come and assist against A-wings and X-wings that are tailing and engaging your objective TIEs when they call for it. That's why teamwork is important. When the TIE fighters get engaged, and they will call for help. And when they call for help, your job is to swing around, engage the X-wings and A-wings that are trying to kill your TIE fighters or TIE bombers, depending on what objective ships you have, and to engage and peel them off to protect the life of the TIE fighter. Your role in fighter screen is only to ensure that your objective TIE fighters and X-wings are alive to fire another volley of torpedoes. You then continue to go back to your primary objective, which is destroying and engaging the enemy team's bombers, so it takes them much longer to fill the morale meter back up, because if they die trying to kill an NPC wave, they have to wait 15 seconds to return, and then they have to come back out, get back in position, engage the NPCs again. For every Y-wing you take down, it extends the phase 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. So it's important to understand what each role has. So there you have it, folks. That's the basic attack strategy, what each responsibility for each of the ships is, and what each of the TIE fighters and TIE defenders are doing. Make sure that your support player has mask and mark, and that he stays behind to protect the raider from incoming torpedo attacks with chaff. Don't forget, the raider is going to be engaging the Nebulon B frigate, and it's the responsibility of the support player to protect the raider from incoming torpedo attacks with its countermeasure system. And don't forget, when your torpedo gets fired, it's 1,500 meters from point to point. 1,500 meters, okay? Which means if the raider is here, the enemy X-wing, that's a terrible X-wing. The enemy X-wing has to start locking on at 1500 meters, and can only release at the last 500. Okay? Which means that if your support player is close by the raider and behind the fighter screen, then what happens is he can fly over, he can pop his chaff, which is a chaff cloud of 200 meters, and any torpedo fired at the raider at that time will be intercepted, blocked, or if he chaffs before the torpedo gets fired, if he chaffs here, it will break the line of sight of the torpedo and stop the launching of the torpedo outright. Because if the locking cone is in the same vector as the chaff cloud, it will break the lock. When the lock is broken, the torpedo cannot be fired, and the X-Wing has to pass around and get ready to come back in. And by that time, you've called for help from your fighter screen. They come in and engage the torpedoing fighter to stop damage coming in. Okay? These kinds of plays are what wins tournaments, and these kinds of plays are what wins fleet battles. So understand the responsibility of each ship, understand the responsibility of the 2-2-1 setup, and understand what each role in the squadron you need to play, whether you're playing objective bully ties, or you're playing fighter screen with the emphasis on suppressing enemy bombers, or engaging fighter screen that is trying to stop your objective bombers. I hope you learned something in the Standard Imperial Attack Strategy Guide, and we will be launching more attack guides, more advanced defense strategies as we go on. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks, and I will see you in the next training session.